My name is Rachel Torres. I'm 29 years old. When my Aunt Gloria stood in front of our whole family at my grandmother's 80th birthday party and announced that Abuela had decided to transfer the family home to her, and that this was what Abuela had wanted all along, I sat at the back of the room and I did not say a word. Because I had, in my apartment 19 miles away, an answering machine cassette from 2018 in which my grandmother's voice said, in Spanish, clearly and specifically, that she did not want Gloria to have the house, that she was afraid, that she was asking for help. I had been waiting for the right moment for 5 years. Before I tell you what happened when that moment arrived, subscribe, hit like, and let's go back to where this story really begins. My grandmother, Esperanza Maria Torres, raised 8 children in a house on West French Place in San Antonio's Prospect Hill neighborhood. The house was built in 1952, the year before my grandmother was born, and was purchased by my grandfather, Ernesto Torres, in 1971, with money he had saved from 15 years working at a brewery on the south side of the city. My grandfather died in 1994 when I was 2 years old. I have no memory of him, but I have the house, which has absorbed everything he was, the way that houses do when a person lives fully in them, when they build the shelves and fix the pipes and plant the fig tree in the backyard, and sand the floors in the bedroom because the wood was good and should be properly cared for. The fig tree was still producing in 2023. I want you to know that. A tree Ernesto Torres planted in 1971 was still making figs in 2023, and my grandmother still made preserves with them every August, and those preserves went to everyone in the family regardless of what was happening legally, because Abuela was not going to let a lawsuit interfere with fig season. That is who she was. Esperanza Torres had 8 children. My Aunt Gloria, the eldest, who was 57 and had always understood herself to be the responsible one. Uncle Marco, who lived in Houston. Aunt Lucia, who was my mother's closest friend and the person who first told me something was wrong. My mother, Elena, who died of cancer when I was 22 and who I will get to. And 4 others spread across Texas and New Mexico who were peripheral to this story in different ways. I am Elena's only child. My father was not in the picture from the time I was small. I grew up, in significant ways, in the house on West French Place, not living there, but present there, the way you are present in a place that you know is the center of something. Sunday dinners, Christmas. The Saturdays of my childhood, sitting in the kitchen while Abuela cooked and listening to whatever she was listening to on the radio, the Spanish stations that played corridos and cumbia and sometimes, when she felt like it, old boleros. She spoke to me in Spanish when it was just the 2 of us. She said it was important that I keep the language. She said, "Your mother will not always be here to remind you, and I will not always be here to remind you, and the language is something I can give you that will be here after both of us." She was right about my mother. My mother died in 2015 when I was 22. Breast cancer, diagnosed the year before. Abuela sat with her every day in the last months. She held her hand. She prayed in the specific and private way she had been praying since she was a girl in Nuevo Laredo, rosary beads worn smooth with 50 years of daily use. After my mother died, Abuela and I became closer than we had been even before. I was an adult. I had recently graduated with my social work degree. I was building a life in San Antonio 19 miles from West French Place. I came every Sunday. I came during the week when I could. I brought groceries and we cooked together and I listened to her stories. She was 80 years old in 2023. She was, and I want to be precise about this because it mattered to the case, sharp, opinionated, funny, and in full possession of her faculties. The idea that she could not understand what she was signing, or what she was agreeing to, or what she was being manipulated into, that idea required ignoring who she actually was. She was Esperanza Torres. She had raised 8 children in that house. She had buried her husband and her daughter. She had made fig preserves every August for 50 years. She was not a woman who did not understand things. But she was a woman who trusted her eldest daughter. And that trust was the thing that was used against her. The Torres family, like many families organized around a strong matriarch, ran on Abuela's gravity. When she gathered, people came. When she had an opinion, it carried weight. When she said something was done, it was done. This meant that whoever managed Abuela managed, to a significant degree, the family. Gloria had always understood this. She had been the eldest, the one who helped raise the younger ones while my grandfather worked, the one who organized the family events and coordinated the dinners and handled the things that needed handling. She had, for 57 years, defined herself by her proximity to Abuela and her role as the family's organizing force. When Abuela's health began to require more support, after a hip replacement in 2016, and then when her vision started going in 2018, it was Gloria who stepped in as the primary caretaker. And this was not unreasonable, or surprising, or suspicious on its face. The eldest taking care of the aging parent is a pattern as old as families. But there is a version of caring for someone that is genuinely about the person, and there is a version that is about managing the person's access and resources. I am not going to pretend I understood immediately which version Gloria's care was. I didn't. I understood it gradually, the way you understand something you don't want to understand. The first sign was access. Abuela had always been available. She answered her phone. She was home on Sundays. The door on West French Place was open in a specific way that communicated welcome without requiring invitation. After the hip replacement, something shifted. The phone was answered less reliably. Sunday visits began requiring a call ahead rather than just an arrival. Gloria explained this as Abuela needing more rest, which was reasonable, which I accepted. The second sign was information. I started hearing things about Abuela's wishes and preferences and health from Gloria rather than from Abuela herself. Gloria would call with updates. She would say, "Abuela doesn't want to be bothered with questions about the house right now." Or, "Abuela has decided she doesn't want so many visitors." Or, "Abuela asked me to handle this." I started calling Abuela directly to check these characterizations. Sometimes they were accurate. Sometimes they weren't. Sometimes Abuela said she had said no such thing and seemed genuinely puzzled. The third sign was the phone call I am about to describe, which was not a sign so much as a clear and urgent message. In October 2018, I called Abuela on a Wednesday evening. I called the landline, which she preferred. Gloria was not at the house that evening. She had her own home 2 miles away. Abuela answered. We talked for a few minutes. She sounded tired but herself. Then she said something that made me sit very still. She said, "Mija, I need to tell you something, but I don't have much time to talk." She was using a specific tone that was not her regular tone. Lower, more careful. I said, "What is it, Abuela?" She said, "Gloria is bringing papers for me to sign. I don't understand all of them. She says they are for my protection, but I don't think that's right. I am worried." I said, "What kind of papers?" She started to explain. Then, in the background, a door. The particular sound of the front door on West French Place. I knew that sound from childhood, the way the latch catches before it opens. She said quickly and quietly, "I have to go, come on Sunday." She hung up. I called back immediately. The line was busy. I called 3 more times over the next hour. Busy each time. I came on Sunday. Gloria was there. The visit was pleasant on its surface. Abuela made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. We talked about family things. Nothing was said about the Wednesday call. Abuela did not reference it. Gloria was present the entire time. I left without being able to speak to Abuela alone. When I got home, I discovered that my answering machine, an old one, the kind with a cassette tape, that I had not replaced because I kept forgetting to, had a message on it. It was from Wednesday evening, timed approximately 20 minutes after our call had been cut short. Abuela had called me back. She had gotten the answering machine, and she had left a message. I listened to it twice. Then I took the cassette out of the machine and I put it in a Ziploc bag, and I put it in the drawer of my bedside table. Then I called Aunt Lucia. The message on the answering machine cassette was 2 minutes and 14 seconds long. I want to be precise about what my grandmother said in it, because her words were the foundation of everything that came after. She spoke in Spanish. She said, "Rachel, it's your grandmother. I'm sorry I had to hang up. Gloria came home early. I am calling quickly while she is in the bathroom." She said, "I want you to know what is happening. Gloria has brought papers for me to sign about the house. She says it is to make sure I am taken care of and the house doesn't go to the state. She has an attorney who she says is helping me, but I don't think this attorney is helping me. Every time I ask questions, the attorney talks around them. Gloria is always there. I cannot ask what I really want to ask." She said, "I don't want to give Gloria the house. The house is for all the children. Your grandfather wanted it to go to all the children equally. I have told Gloria this. She says that is not practical, and that she is the one who is here taking care of me and the others are not here." She said, "I am not sick in my mind. I understand what she is asking me to do. I am saying I do not want to do it, but she keeps bringing the papers back." A pause. She said, "I am telling you because your mother would have told you, and because you will know what to do." She said she had to go. That was the message. I have listened to it dozens of times since. What strikes me, every time, is not the fear in it, though there is fear, but the precision. She was not confused. She was not distressed to the point of incoherence. She was a woman clearly and specifically describing a situation, asking for help, and trusting her granddaughter to understand it. She was 85 years old in 2018. She had been 85 for 3 months. I called Aunt Lucia that night. Lucia was the family member I trusted most fully. She had been my mother's closest sibling, she was observant, and she had no particular axis to grind. She lived in New Braunfels, 50 miles away. Lucia confirmed that she had been having her own concerns. She had visited Abuela in September and found Gloria managing the visit with a specificity she found uncomfortable, redirecting conversations, answering questions that Abuela had been asked, and at one point leaving the room and coming back within 3 minutes of Lucia and Abuela being alone. She said it felt supervised. I said it was. I told her about the message. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We need an attorney." I said, "Yes, but first I need to understand what has already been signed." This was the first problem. We did not know what had already been signed because we had not been told. Gloria managed all of Abuela's paperwork and correspondence, and Abuela, who trusted her eldest daughter with the same fundamental faith that she had trusted Ernesto, the faith of a woman who believed the people she loved were working in her interest, had not kept track of documents the way I would have. I called the Bixar County Clerk's office the next morning and asked about recent filings on the West French Place property. There had been one, in September 2018, 6 weeks before Abuela's phone call. A partial transfer of interest, 20% of the property, transferred to Gloria Torres. It had already started. I began building the file that night. Every document I could access publicly. Every dated entry in my phone about conversations I'd had and things I'd noticed. The message on the cassette, which I did not put in a drawer again, I had it converted to a digital file at a store on Commerce Street within 48 hours of hearing it. I had the original cassette. I had a digital copy. I gave Lucia a copy on a flash drive. I did not know, in October 2018, how long this was going to take. What I knew was that the cassette existed, and that what was on it was my grandmother's voice, and that voices like hers do not go unheard if the right person is listening. The 5 years between Abuela's message and the moment I was able to use it were not years of waiting passively. They were years of building. I want to be honest about why it took 5 years, because the answer is not simple and is not flattering to me. Part of it was legal. the process of challenging transfers in Texas property law required patience and preparation, and our attorney, a woman named Isabel Vega who practiced estate and elder law in San Antonio, told us early that going in too fast would damage our case. Part of it was strategic. Isabel wanted us to document the full pattern of behavior before we challenged any specific transaction, because a pattern is more persuasive than a single instance. But part of it, I'll admit, was personal. I kept hoping that Gloria would stop. I kept thinking, this is my grandmother's daughter. This is my mother's sister. Surely there is a point at which she looks at what she is doing and decides it is not worth it. Surely there is a conscience in there somewhere. There was not, or if there was, it was not engaged by anything I observed. In January 2019, another transfer. 10%, this time to a limited liability entity called Torres Family Trust, LLC, which had been registered by Gloria's husband Raymond in December 2018. In July 2019, another 10%, same entity. In November 2020, another 15%. By the end of 2020, Gloria held 20% in her own name and 45% through the LLC. The house Ernesto Torres had bought with 15 years of savings was 55% owned by his eldest daughter, and her husband through instruments my grandmother had not fully understood and had not had independent counsel review. Isabel documented each transaction. She documented the attorney who had prepared them, a man named Clifford Reyes, who had an office in a strip mall on Culebra Road, and whose practice included a great deal of work for the same LLC that Raymond had registered. She documented the pattern. Mrs. Reyes, no relation to Clifford, lived across the street from the house on West French Place. I will tell you about her in a moment. In 2021, Abuela's vision deteriorated further. She was no longer driving. She was more dependent on Gloria for transportation and appointments. Gloria had, by this point, managed to significantly reduce Abuela's direct contact with other family members, not by formal restriction, but by the steady friction of things always being complicated, visits always requiring more coordination than they used to, Abuela always seeming to be resting, or have just taken her medication, or not be up to a long visit. I kept coming, every Sunday, every other Wednesday. I called Isabel after every visit with anything I had observed. I did not tell Abuela what I was doing, not because I didn't trust her, but because I was afraid that if Gloria knew we were building a case, she would accelerate the transfers. Isabel agreed. She said, "We move when we are ready, not before." In 2022, we discovered that Clifford Reyes had been sanctioned by the Texas State Bar in 2017 for a matter involving another elderly client. The sanction was public record. The details were not identical to what was happening on West French Place, but close enough that Isabel found the pattern significant. She filed a complaint with the State Bar. She also contacted the Bexar County Adult Protective Services Office, which had an elder financial exploitation unit. APS opened an investigation. In the meantime, I kept my Sunday visits. I kept my Wednesday calls. I listened to my grandmother's voice every week, her real voice, talking about fig preserves and the old corridos and my mother and the house, and I held the cassette in my memory the way you hold something you know you are going to need. The 80th birthday party was in March 2023. I sat in the back of the room, and I watched Gloria make her announcement, and I said nothing. Because Isabel had called me the previous Friday. She said, "I think we're ready." I said, "Then let's go." I want to tell you about the specific texture of being shut out of your grandmother's life by someone who is doing it gradually and with plausible deniability, because it is one of the more demoralizing experiences I have had. It is not one event. It is not a moment where someone says, "You are not welcome here." It is a series of small frictions, each individually negligible, that add up over time to a wall. A visit that gets rescheduled. An afternoon that gets cut short because Abuela is tired. A phone call that goes unanswered and is returned by Gloria, who passes on Abuela's message rather than connecting you. A Sunday dinner that you arrive at to find 3 of Gloria's friends already there, the dynamic already set, your grandmother at the center of someone else's arrangement of the afternoon. Each of these things is nothing. Together they are everything. I want to be specific about one incident in 2021 that made visible what had been invisible. I arrived at West French Place on a Sunday in April unannounced. I had been doing this occasionally, varying my pattern on Isabel's suggestion. The door was answered by Raymond, Gloria's husband. He said Abuela was resting. He said Gloria was out. He said he would have Abuela call me when she was up. I stood on the porch of my grandmother's house, and the door was not open to me. I said, "Can I come in and wait?" He said, "She's resting. It's not a good time." I said, "I'd like to see her." He said, "I'll have her call you." And he closed the door. I sat in my car outside the house for 45 minutes. At one point, I saw Abuela's silhouette at the living room window, not close enough to make out her expression, not long enough to be sure it was her. The silhouette disappeared. I called Lucia from the car. Lucia had had 3 similar experiences in the past year. She had been told, in one instance, that she needed to give 48 hours notice before visiting because Abuela's schedule was more structured now. Abuela, who had run an open house for 80 years. Abuela, whose door on West French Place had been unlocked during the daylight hours since 1971. Abuela, who had never in her life required 48 hours notice from family. Lucia said, when I told her about the closed door, "It's getting closer." I said, "I know." She said, "When do we move?" I said, "Isabel says soon. We just need the APS investigation to finish." Lucia said, "I talked to Mrs. Reyes last week." Mrs. Reyes had been watching. She had been watching since 2018 because she had known Esperanza Torres since 1979, and she was not a woman who stopped paying attention. Marisol Reyes was 68 years old, retired from a 30-year career as a school librarian, and had lived directly across from the house on West French Place since 1982. She and my grandmother had been the kind of friends who knew each other's family stories better than their own in some cases. The friendship of neighbors who have watched each other's children grow up and whose routines have been visible to each other for decades. She had watched Gloria's management of the West French Place house with the specific attention of a woman who has raised children to know the difference between help and control. She kept, as it happened, a garden journal. She had kept one since 1990. It recorded, along with planting notes and weather observations, a remarkable amount of neighborhood activity, not in a gossipy way, but in the way of a woman who was always at the window or at the front gate, who noticed things and found them worth recording. Her entries relating to my grandmother's situation began in August 2018 and were specific and dated. She had recorded Gloria's car arriving at 6 a.m. on multiple occasions. She had recorded a man she described as the attorney, the one who parks the black Tahoe, arriving and leaving within 2 hours on 7 separate occasions across 2018 and 2019, always when Abuela's other visitors, the friends from church, my Aunt Lucia, me, were not there. She had recorded Raymond answering the door to family members on 4 occasions, turning them away. She had recorded one specific afternoon in February 2020 when she had been at the front gate and Abuela had appeared at the window of the front bedroom and held her hand against the glass. She had written, "Esperanza" at the window. She looked like she wanted to say something. Her hand stayed on the glass for a long time. I waved. She turned away. I read that entry 3 times. She also recorded, April 2021, Rachel at the door. Raymond answered. Door closed after 2 minutes. Rachel sat in her car. I wanted to go over, but I didn't know what to do. I hadn't known she had seen that. I hadn't known anyone had. She gave a statement to APS in 2022. She gave a full affidavit to Isabel in early 2023. She was willing to testify. She said to me when I came to thank her, "Your grandmother told me once that she was not afraid of dying. She said she was afraid of not being listened to. I thought about that a lot." I said, "Yes." She said she should have been listened to. I said she was. It just took longer than it should have. Mrs. Reyes was, in the hearing room, the same person she was at her garden gate. Specific, calm, unhurried, and clearly without any motive beyond telling the truth about what she had seen. The judge asked her several clarifying questions. She answered each one precisely. When asked whether she could characterize the general pattern of activity she had observed, she said, "I would characterize it as a woman being slowly separated from her own life." The courtroom was quiet for a moment. The judge wrote something down. In January 2023, 2 months before the birthday party, I had a visit with Abuela that I did not know would be one of the last ones before the legal proceedings changed everything. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I had called ahead. I had learned to call ahead by then, not because I accepted the 48-hour notice requirement, but because calling ahead improved the probability that Gloria would be somewhere else. It worked that day. When I arrived, only Abuela was home. She was in the kitchen, making beans. The specific smell of that kitchen, onion and cumin, and the old gas stove that needed the burner lit with a match, was the smell of every Wednesday of my childhood. She said, "Sit down. Tell me what you're doing." I told her about my work. I had a case. I am a social worker, Child Protective Services, that I was struggling with. A family situation that was complicated and sad in the specific way that made you question the efficiency of every system you were supposed to believe in. Abuela listened the way she had always listened, with her full attention and without interrupting until I was done. Then she said, "The families you work with, they don't trust the system." I said, "Not usually." She said, "Because the system has not helped them before." I said, "Mostly yes." She nodded slowly. She stirred the beans. She said, "I understand that better now than I used to." She said it quietly, without drama, without self-pity. As an observation, as the kind of statement a person makes when they have gained knowledge they would have preferred not to have. I said, "Abuela, I want to tell you something." She looked at me. She had her reading glasses on, and over them she looked at me with the full focus that had been looking at me since I was born. I said, "I am working on something. I can't tell you everything yet, but I want you to know that I hear you. What you told me in 2018, I heard it. I have been doing something about it." She was quiet for a moment. She kept stirring the beans. Then she said, "I was wondering when you would tell me." I said, "You knew." She said, "I know you, Mija. You are like your mother. You don't say nothing when something is wrong. You just wait until you know what to do." She said, "How much longer?" I said, "A few months." She nodded. She did not ask for details. She trusted me the way she had trusted her grandmother's way, fully, without requiring explanation. She said, "Good, I am tired of this." I said, "I know." She said, "Your grandfather would be very angry." I said, "Yes." She said, "He planted that fig tree so that all the children would have figs, not so that one child could charge rent for the other's access to it." I laughed. She had not lost her wit. She had not lost anything. She was entirely herself. I helped her finish dinner. I stayed until 7. When I left, she walked me to the door the way she always had, and she held my arm at the top of the porch steps, which was new, her balance, and she said, "Be careful driving." I said I would. I drove home with the specific feeling of purpose that comes when the person you are fighting for knows you are fighting. 2 months later, Isabel said we were ready. I am going to tell you, what we found when we examined the full record of what Gloria had done, because the scope of it matters. Between September 2018 and November 2021, Gloria and Raymond, through Clifford Rays, had executed 6 separate transfer instruments, moving a total of 55% of the West French Place property into Gloria's name and their LLC. Each instrument bore Abuela's signature. Each had been witnessed and notarized by parties connected to Clifford Rays' network. Not one of the 6 signings had included independent counsel for my grandmother. Not one had included another family member. Every signing had taken place at the house on West French Place, in the presence of Gloria and usually Raymond. APS's investigation concluded in February 2023, 2 months before we filed. Their findings: a pattern of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Their recommendation: referral to the Bexar County District Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation. Isabel had the APS report in hand when we filed. The case Esperanza Torres, by her granddaughter Rachel Torres as next friend, v. Gloria Torres Mendez and Raymond Mendez, was filed in Bexar County District Court in April 2023. The grounds: financial elder abuse under Texas Health and Safety Code Chapter 48, undue influence, and fraud in the inducement of each of the 6 transfer instruments. Gloria's attorney was a man named Patrick Burns, who had the particular defensive energy of someone who knows his client's position is weak and is going to make as much noise as possible to compensate. His initial response was a 42-page document that characterized Abuela as a willing and informed participant, characterized me as a disgruntled relative, attempting to capitalize on my position as a social worker to manipulate an elderly woman, and characterized Gloria as a devoted daughter who had sacrificed her own time and resources to care for a dependent parent. Isabel read the response and said, 42 pages is not confidence. 42 pages is someone trying to fill the room with words, so there's no space for the actual evidence. The hearing was set for October 2023. Isabel Vega had been practicing elder law in San Antonio for 22 years when I first called her in November 2018. She had the particular quality of a person who has heard enough bad stories that she is no longer surprised by them, but not so many that she has stopped being angered by them. Her office was small and well-organized and had, on the wall facing her desk, a framed quote from a Texas Supreme Court decision about the duty of care owed to vulnerable adults. She had put it there, she told me once, because she liked to see it when she was tired. She took my case because of the cassette. When I first called her, I described the situation: the transfers I had found in the public record, Abuela's account of being pressured, the access being controlled. She listened with the professional attention of someone taking notes. Then I said, I also have a recording. She said, what kind of recording? I told her about the answering machine. She was quiet for a moment. She said, I'd like to hear it. I came to her office the following week with the cassette and the digital copy. I played it on my phone. She listened to the full 2 minutes and 14 seconds without moving. When it ended, she sat back in her chair. She said, how old is your grandmother? I said, 85. She said, and this is from 2018. I said, yes. She said, she sounds completely clear. I said, she is completely clear. Isabel said, I want to take this case. She said, I want to be honest with you. This is going to take longer than you want it to. Texas property law moves slowly and Gloria has given herself a head start. But what you have in that recording is your grandmother's voice saying, before any of this was documented or challenged or contested, that she did not want to do what she was being pressured to do. That is not reconstructed testimony. That is not a relative's interpretation. That is her voice. She said, voices like that are very hard to argue against. She was right. In the hearing room, in October 2023, When the digital recording was played through the court speakers, Abuela's voice in Spanish, with a certified translation displayed simultaneously for the judge, the room was entirely still. Abuela was in the gallery. She had insisted on coming. She sat next to Aunt Lucia in the second row with her rosary beads in her left hand and her eyes straight forward. When her own voice from 2018 finished, she nodded once, very slightly, as if confirming something to herself. I want to tell you about the 5 years honestly, because I think they deserve honesty. There were months when I was certain we would lose. There were months when I called Isabel and she had to remind me, with the patient precision of someone who had seen more of these cases than I had, that the process was working even when it didn't feel like it. There were months when I visited Abuela on Sunday and sat in the kitchen and talked about the fig tree and thought, I am failing her. I am supposed to be doing something and I am just sitting here talking about figs. There was one conversation with Isabel in the fall of 2021 that I almost derailed everything by having. I had been frustrated with the pace and I said, what if we just file now? What if we don't wait for the APS investigation? What if we go now and let them catch up? She said, if we file now, we have a recording and a pattern and an affidavit from a neighbor across the street. If we wait, we have all of that plus a completed government investigation and a referral for criminal charges. The second case wins. The first case might not. I said, what if she does something in the meantime? What if she transfers the rest of it? Isabel said, your grandmother still holds 45%. Texas homestead law provides some protections. I am watching the title closely. If something files, I will know within 48 hours. She said, Rachel, trust the patients. I went home and I called Abuela. We talked about the fig preserves. She had made an extra jar for me that year. She said, come and get it on Sunday. I came on Sunday. I got the preserves. I sat in the kitchen. I trusted the patients. In 2022, the APS investigation concluded. In early 2023, the criminal referral was made to the DA. Isabel filed in April. In October 2023, we went to the hearing with the recording, Mrs. Reyes's affidavit, Lucia's testimony, my own documented observations, the APS report, the criminal referral, an expert witness in elder financial exploitation who reviewed every transaction, and a title history showing 6 separate transfers over 3 years that had been accomplished without independent counsel each time. Gloria's attorney made a lot of noise. The noise did not change the evidence. The judge, Patricia Harlow, was 60 years old and had been on the bench for 12 years and had, Isabel told me afterward, presided over more elder exploitation cases than any other judge in the county. She was not easily impressed by noise. The hearing took 3 days. On the first day, the documentary record was established. The title history, the 6 transfer instruments, the APS report, the financial expert's analysis of each transaction's irregularities. On the second day, testimony. Aunt Lucia, who was precise and specific about the supervised visits and the changes in Abuela's access to her family. Mrs. Reyes, who brought her garden journal and read from it in a voice that did not waver. Me, who had made a timeline of every visit and phone call and documented observation over 5 years, which I presented with the same methodical organization I used for case files at work. Then, the recording. Isabel played it twice. The first time with the certified translation displayed. The second time just the Spanish, Abuela's voice alone in the room. My grandmother's voice in 2018 saying, I am not sick in my mind. On the third day, Gloria took the stand. She was not the person she presented to the family. In the hearing room, without the performance of the devoted daughter, she was defensive and imprecise, and, in 2 specific moments, contradicted testimony she had given in her deposition. Isabel was methodical and patient on cross. She asked Gloria about the 6 transfers. She asked whether Abuela had had independent counsel for any of them. Gloria said Abuela had understood what she was signing. Isabel asked, "Who explained it to her?" Gloria said, "I did, and Clifford, and Raymond was there." Isabel asked, "Anyone who was working specifically for your mother's interests? Anyone whose professional duty was to her alone?" A pause. Gloria said, "Clifford was helping the whole family." Isabel said, "Clifford Reyes, who had been sanctioned by the state bar for similar conduct in a prior case." Burns objected, sustained. Isabel moved on, but the question had landed. Judge Harlow delivered her ruling in writing 2 weeks later. She voided all 6 transfer instruments on grounds of undue influence, elder financial exploitation, and absence of independent counsel. She ordered the property restored to Abuela's full ownership. She referred the matter for civil penalties under Texas elder exploitation statutes. The criminal investigation by the DA was separate and remains, as of this telling, ongoing. The house on West French Place is Esperanza Torres' house again. It has been since November 2023. Gloria and Raymond have not been present at a family event since the ruling. I do not know what their financial situation is. I have made a deliberate choice not to know. What I know is what happened on the Sunday after the ruling was official. I drove to West French Place. I rang the bell because I still ring the bell, even though Abuela has told me many times that I don't need to. She came to the door herself, which was new. She had been doing her physical therapy. She was doing better. She looked at me. She said, "Come in, I made coffee." I went in. She had made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. The kitchen was exactly the kitchen it had always been, the gas stove, the old tile, the smell of onion and cumin already present from something she had cooking, the radio on the counter playing a bolero station she had been listening to since before I was born. She put a jar of fig preserves in front of me. She said, "From last August. I saved one for this occasion." I said, "What occasion?" She said, "The occasion of things being what they should be." I opened the jar. We had the preserves on pan dulce she had in the bread box, the kind she had been buying from the bakery on Cuva Road since 1975. We drank our coffee. The bolero station played. At one point she said, "I want to talk to a real attorney, about a real will, one that says what I actually want." I said, "I know a good one." She said, "Of course you do." The real will was executed in December 2023, with Isabel's referral to a probate attorney whose only client in the matter was Esperanza Torres. It said what she wanted it to say. All 8 children, equal shares. The fig tree included. Abuela said, Ernesto would say it was about time. I said, yes. She said, he was usually right about things like that. There is a gate at the side of the house on West French Place that connects the front garden to the backyard. My grandfather built it in 1972, the year after they moved in. It is wood, painted a specific green, that has been repainted regularly enough that it has been that green for 50 years, without being the same coat of paint. Abuela opens it herself every morning. This is her routine. She gets up, she makes coffee, she takes her coffee to the backyard, and she opens the gate first. This is how she begins her day. She has done this for 50 years. After the ruling, on the first Sunday I came for a visit, she opened the gate before I arrived. When I pulled up, it was already open. She was in the backyard with her coffee, looking at the fig tree. I let myself through the open gate. I sat with her. She said, "The stubborn one is coming in." I said, "What?" She said, "That branch on the left. It always tries to go over the fence into Mrs. Reyes' yard. I have been fighting it for 20 years. I said, "Who wins?" She said, "We take turns." The fig tree was full and green, and doing whatever it had decided to do regardless of the past 2 years of legal proceedings. 50-year-old tree, planted by a man who wanted his children to have figs. I have a photograph of my grandmother at that gate on that Sunday morning. Her hand on the green painted wood, her coffee in the other hand, looking at the fig tree with the particular expression of a woman surveying something she owns. I carry it the same way Maya carries her photograph of Daniel on the dock. The same way Sarah holds the memory of the rose garden on a June afternoon. It is the image of someone at home. She opened the gate herself. She has been opening it herself for 50 years. She will open it until she decides she doesn't want to anymore. That is what the fight was for, not the property in the abstract. That, Esperanza Tours opening her own gate in the morning. I am glad I waited. I am glad I was patient. I am glad I kept the cassette. My grandmother's voice said, "I am not sick in my mind." She never was. If you're still here, thank you for this story. It's been 5 years in the making, and I'm grateful to have a place to put it. The practical thing I want to leave you with is this. If you have a family member whose affairs are being managed by another family member, and you are worried, call an elder law attorney. Not a general attorney. An elder law specialist. Most offer a free initial consultation. In Texas, there is also the Long-Term Care Ombudsman, the Adult Protective Services Hotline, and legal aid services for people over 60. One more thing, save the recordings. If a voicemail or a phone message or an answering machine tape has something important on it, do not delete it. Convert it, copy it, put it somewhere safe. My grandmother's 2 minutes and 14 seconds changed everything. She trusted me with it. I hope you have someone you can trust the same way. Subscribe if you want more. Leave your story in the comments. Thank you for listening.